So let's tune in a little bit together before our discussion. So just coming in, taking a comfortable seated position. Come and sit with a nice straight spine. Crown of the head lifting up to the sky. Tailbone dropping down into the earth. Just letting the eyes gently close. And letting go. Letting go of all of the tension in the body. Allowing the body to melt down into the ground. Completely releasing. Completely relaxing. Letting go of all of the tension in the mind. Letting the mind settle, come to rest. Letting go of thoughts about the past. Letting go of thoughts about the future. Just dropping down deep into an awareness of the present moment, the here and now. Allowing the thoughts to pass by like clouds in an endless sky, without attachment, without aversion. Open, spacious, sky-like mind. The sense of bringing together all of the disparate aspects of yourselves, all the different energies and emotions, feelings and sensations, all the different thoughts, all the different bodies that go to make us up in our entirety. Just a sense of gathering, of bringing these different forces together into this very body, into this very moment. A sense of arrival, a sense of coming home to oneself. Nowhere to go to, nowhere to be, nothing to do or to become. Just this. Just here, just now, the fullness of all creation in this very moment. So, good evening once again, everybody. Thank you for coming this evening to our Saturday night entertainment. So, most of you have drunk with me before, some new people, but mostly older students. So, that's good for the new people, give you some kind of confidence in the people are coming back, there must be something okay. Plus they're still alive, that's always good. And even that they might seem bright-eyed and sprightly in their energy, which is also good news. So the way that we start is always with discussion, with some questions and some answers, trying to bring some clarity, some clarification to the work that we're going to be doing together, and the work that you're doing in your own lives on a spiritual evolutionary path. So obviously the people who've drunk with me before, you're welcome to ask, usual stuff. New people, we try and keep it fairly fluid, fairly open, in the sense that we don't necessarily just have to talk about ayahuasca or ayahuasca shamanism, but the whole of reality, reality and spiritual life and what that means, and how we can best evolve ourselves to be a benefit to other beings, essentially, in the end. So I would invite you to ask questions and not to be shy. The questions that you ask will be of benefit to everybody, and the answers will be of benefit to everybody. And let's just jump straight in and see. So it's not easy to understand this work. It's not easy to understand what spiritual practice is, what spiritual evolution is, generally speaking, and especially, I would say, when it comes to the shamanic traditions in particular, and the medicine plant-based shamanic traditions especially. They're especially confusing and can lead us quite awry, meaning that we can actually be thinking that we're moving along towards a particular goal of spiritual liberation or freedom or something, but actually we find that we're perhaps taking a side path and not really evolving that much. It's possible to drink a huge amount of medicine. It's possible to drink medicine every day, every week, and have all kinds of extraordinary experiences. You're going to have something happen, astral experiences, magical experiences, etc. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to integrate that experience, utilize that experience, or even understand that experience. We're not always the best judge of our own internal experience. Sometimes we need some kind of external clarity or clarification to what we're experiencing, especially when it comes to these sort of magical schools, because of course our own schooling, our own education never approach these subjects, at least for 99.99999% of us, we don't go into this stuff, and even if it's kind of hidden away within our culture, we don't necessarily have any contact with it. So it's good to ask and to try and find out what this work is really about and what the real benefit is of this work, because not always clear. So please do feel free to ask. It's important. The discussion, the dharma, the teaching is as important and can bring as much as the medicine itself, if we talk.
No.
Go on.
Well, might come as a surprise to you, but I have a question.
Good.
So I remember from early days of exploring entheogens and psychedelics, the visionary aspect was more prominent. Going into my first ayahuasca experiences, I think I had this expectation of having these grand visions and everything. And I didn't really. It was not that visionary at all. I had sometimes a little bit of that DMT thing, and I would purge, and then there would be nothing. And so I shared this once to my a woman in Stockholm that I sat with and learned from a little bit, and yeah, and she would say good, because that means you're going away from that stage and know that the real visions you see from the heart. And yeah, so I mean, as I am now, I've dropped most of the expectations. I've come to, you know, not look for the visionary in that sense. But yeah, I'm still curious to hear comment on that part of the DMT versus the seeing from the heart thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, of course, we've understood perhaps from our research that you know these medicine plants, these psychedelics, are supposed to give us visions. This is the thing that kind of we're craving after in some respects. But the truth of the matter is kind of irrelevant. It's kind of irrelevant. Now, look, it depends. Really, what we want to come to is a much deeper level of realization about the nature of generative experience. So I'll talk about it in a number of different ways. So firstly, let's just go to the simple explanation. Essentially, everything that happens on the medicine is a form of purging. Everything that's happening is a form of purging. Visions are a form of purging, the sweating, the shaking, the shitting, the shivering, the puking, all of these things, form of purging. Visionary experience, exactly the same. It's just purging deeper aspects of the psyche, you know, subconscious imagery, kind of morphogenetic kind of energies that are connected with the whole of the human species, things of this nature. There's all kinds of things within the subconscious, superconscious and conscious mind that need to be expunged in order to come to a place of clarity, a space of peace, essentially. So what's happening is the medicine is moving through the different energy channels. As it moves through the energy channels, it moves through karmic obstructions and restrictions, energy blockages, things of this nature, and it comes out through the phenomenon of the medicine. It comes out in the visionary component of the medicine. It comes out in the states of consciousness that are experienced under the influence of the medicine. And all it is purification. Is the channels are being purged, the psyche is being purged, the subconscious is being purged. So when the channels get clearer and clearer, there is no more friction. When there's no more friction, there's no more phenomenon. So really what we're trying to come to is a space really where kind of nothing happens. Now initially, of course, we've got a bunch of stuff to deal with, so we have all kinds of crazy experiences. As we move along the path, as we continue to purify ourselves and clean ourselves in this way, we don't have so much experience, it begins to drop away. Now, it's a spiral path, so we revisit it. Sometimes we have visionary experience, sometimes we don't have visionary experiences. But generally speaking, the general flow is that in the beginning we have very powerful experiences, we have very magical experiences, we have very visionary experiences, and as we go along we have milder but deeper and more potent experiences, because we're beginning to get in touch with the subtler forces of life, of reality. So really, we've only ever really experienced the gross, superficial manifestations in our lives at really every level. It's only really when we begin to purify and clean ourselves and really begin to move into stillness and silence that then we're able to tune into the more subtle aspects of reality, which is where we find the real stuff actually. So we need to lessen our craving after the phenomenological side of the medicine. We need to lessen our craving for the fireworks and the thunderbolts and all of that kind of side of it, and really learn how to work more with subtlety. Subtlety is really where we're going to find the deeper aspects and the higher realizations ultimately. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is, yes, there are different qualities of seeing, and there are different inner sensory capacities. So we tend to have a fixation, for the most part, on the visionary aspect of inner work, but it may be that our abilities lie elsewhere, that we may actually be able to hear the inner worlds better than we can see them. We may be able to feel the inner worlds better than we can hear them. We may even begin to taste and smell the inner worlds which also have their own qualities and value. Actually, you can learn quite a lot in those kind of subtle ways. So we give less emphasis to the seeing aspect of it as well as time goes on. Also, of course, if we're doing a lot of work, drinking a lot of medicine over a longer period of time, then of course the dimethyltryptamine in the brain supply is beginning to drop quite low, and we perhaps need to do things to boost it up again in order to be able to see things more clearly. Eating tryptamine-based foods, 5-MeO, 5-HTP, not 5-MeO. That might do it. So that's another thing, is that we need to keep kind of boosting that energy in order to be able to get the visionary aspect of it as well. But the main thing is not to focus on it, not to be concerned about it, and not to crave after it, because we're not here to crave after more phenomenon. We're here to discover what is true. We can play in those astral realms for eternity, and in fact we have been playing in those astral realms for eternity, hence the fact that we're still here. So we're going to find all kinds of new experiences to bind us to the material plane. We don't really want to try and find more experiences to bind us onto the astral plane either. We want to be able to be free of all these planes of existence and to be able to play and drop in and drop out at will and at leisure, rather than being bound and constrained by those levels of reality. So there's that. There are other things, but that's the main stuff I would say.
Did you just say that like the dimethyltryptamine gets kind of depleted in the brain over time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does depend. We're only talking about if you're doing a lot of work over a short period of time. If you're drinking every now and again, no, I mean, you boost it up pretty easily in between. But these guys have been drinking quite a lot recently, so definitely. I used to do like 10-day retreats, up to 20-day and then up to 30-day retreats. And of course, in the beginning of those retreats, you have very, very extraordinary experiences, big visions. And by the 10th day or so, at least at a 20 or 30-day retreat, you're hardly seeing anything. You need to start doing a lot of supplements, you need to take vitamins, you need to take a lot of minerals into the body. Minerals are in fact more important than vitamins for spiritual work, because minerals build the base which can hold the energies that you're using. So, but yeah, only over a long period of time, not generally.
What kind of mineral supplements do you suggest?
I mean, you really want a kind of a broad spectrum mineral base, actually. I mean, obviously there are things that are better for men and things that are better for women, but a broad spectrum base for spiritual work is pretty good, and it needs to be a high quality version. Also, of course, in the beginning, some people don't see anything. That's the other side of the coin. Why not? Well, again, blockages within the energy system, and primarily calcification of the pineal. Pineal gland gets very calcified very, very easily, or perhaps not so easily, but certainly in our environment, without water supply and without food supply, it can calcify pretty easily. So when the pineal gland is calcified, it turns into basically a rock, and it takes some medicine to chip away at it before you kind of see stuff. Not always, but that can happen also. And then once you have all those kind of wild experiences at the beginning, then the journey begins to get a little bit more quiet and still.
How do you distinguish between the subconscious and the unconscious?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think ultimately, of course, we need to always avoid the tendency to make too clear delineation barriers in these things. Obviously, ultimately, it kind of all merges into the one, it all merges into the essential system of the self. But we can make things that perhaps make our explorations a little bit clearer, a little bit more easy to understand. I think that a Jungian model is okay at a really, really basic level. I think that we can basically define things like a superconscious, we can define an id and an ego, we can define a subconscious and a universal subconscious realm. I think to just leave it at that for now. I mean, obviously the spiritual systems, particularly of the East, have much clearer language, and they have much more detailed stages, states, and analysis of consciousness and what that is. We don't really have the language for it in the West. We pretty much have to borrow the language of either the psychologists who were missing the mark to a certain degree, or the Eastern traditions where the language hasn't come down to its very extent. We don't really know what we're talking about when we use these words. So part of our work, I think, generally speaking, is to develop a new language, a language that we as Westerners can understand, that actually means something when we use these words. You know, we say things like we want enlightenment, but we don't know what enlightenment is. We've got no clue. You know, karma, we've got no clue. We don't really know what any of these things are. The Theosophists and the early translators of the Eastern texts were not particularly well versed in the subject because they had no background, and it kind of didn't really change much since then. Now we've got a better understanding, but we're still holding on to a lot of 19th century views of Eastern terminology, so we need to develop new ways to understand it, I feel. You know, you can do a kind of like a 7-year PhD in Buddhist psychology, and that's just going into all of the various stages of mind and consciousness and what that is, and 7 years of study. That's just on the academic level, never mind on the meditative level. It needs to be appropriate to our internal experience, you see. There's no point, that in those schools of meditation, in those schools of spiritual philosophy, they're always combined. You do the practice with the academia, and this gives you the academic background to what you're experiencing, but you're experiencing so you know what they're talking about.
And how has the meditation and Eastern background informed how you work with medicine?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for asking. We were discussing a little bit earlier, in fact, weren't we, when we met this morning? Yeah, so when I was much younger and I started to do psychedelics for the first time, instantaneously I was propelled directly into a tantric universe. There were the tantric deities, I knew their names, I knew who they were. I was not brought up in those traditions, I had nothing to do with those traditions, but it just opened for me. And then I played, as we do in our younger years. And then as I began to work more within the shamanic traditions, with the ayahuasca very particularly, that's what came through again, and it came through so strongly. And that was my shamanic path. So Tantra, the Shivite deities, the Kali stuff, all that kind of thing is not recognised so much or considered so much as being a shamanic tradition in the West, but of course it is, See, shamanism really only needs 3 very basic things to be a shamanic tradition. It really only needs to be a tradition where they utilise some means of entering into trance, deep states of consciousness, and that can be through any means. That can be through drumming, through dance, through whirling, through fasting, through medicines, anything. It needs to have healing work. There needs to be healing work taking place. So in the works of Carlos Castaneda, no shamanism, because Castaneda doesn't do any healing. He just goes around doing sorcery. Third thing, needs allies, needs partnership with spiritual beings on the other side of the equation. In other words, something like Reiki is not a shamanic tradition because it doesn't have allies in that way. I mean, some people might say it does, and we can talk about that another time, but the idea is it needs to have a host of spiritual energies that you're working with that help you with your work, basically. So for myself and for my teacher, the allies that have come to me and the allies that I've been working with for many lifetimes are the tantric deities. I've been working actually in a large number of different traditions, but what I've found is that the tantric deities are the most appropriate for this time of human evolution, where we are. They're very fast, they work very quickly, we don't have a lot of time, or let's say we don't know how long we have. There is a certain urgency to our mission, to our work here on the planet, and the tantric deities, the promise of Tantra has always been, if done correctly, if faced with a warrior spirit and heart, that one can achieve liberation, freedom and enlightenment in a single lifetime. So this is essentially why I work with them, and there is a very natural and very organic and very real and very deep relationship between the ayahuasca medicine and these tantric deities, which may seem unusual or strange to some of you because you're thinking, here we are in the Amazon and here we are over in India. But actually, of course, in India there were many medicines that were utilised in their shamanism, in their practices, one of which, of course, was the very famous Soma medicine, In Soma medicine, it was ayahuasca, in my view, or at least, let's say, a harmaline and methyltryptamine substitute of some kind or another, probably Syrian rue and some other DMT-containing plant, of which there are many. So they were saying back then, we drink this medicine, we see the gods. Well, same as we drink this medicine, we see the gods. They said, we drink this medicine, we become as of the gods. We drink medicine, we become as of the gods also. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what you connect with through my ceremony. They're just the energies that I'm working with to benefit you. But you may come to the understanding or recognition of your own allies, your own spiritual lineages that have come to you through your own practice in past lives, your own work in this life. So just because there are tantric deities helping, it doesn't mean you will be in tantric world. You might be in Egyptian world, you might be in Druid world, you might be in other things. That's how the medicine works. It wants to potentialise and it wants to open you up to your own power, your own magic, your own shamanism, your own reality, ultimately. Amongst other beings and energies that we work with. Yeah. We're eclectic but traditional. We're evolutionary but traditional. Yeah, you'll see. One foot in the past, one foot in the future, like this. Also, we're bringing together the different spiritual schools and traditions from various places and evolving from that also. So we're bringing in the shamanic traditions from various places. We're bringing in the meditative traditions from various places. And we are bringing in the scientific and Western, rational, logical aspect of all of this also. Bring your mind with you to the work. Bring your rationality with you. Bring your logic with you. If it does not stand up to your scrutiny, let it go. Nobody's asking for any kind of belief in this work. It's experiential. But I don't care what you believe in. You can believe there's a pink elephant in the middle of the room. It doesn't make any difference. This is the falsity of the Judeo-Christian exoteric traditions, unfortunately, in that they are lying to people, saying belief will save you. Belief will not save you. Experience will save you.
How do you define exoteric?
Exoteric means the outer order or the public presentation of a system, the available texts, usually under the auspices of a priesthood of some kind or another. The esoteric, of course, is the occult or hidden tradition, the mystical heart of the exoteric religions. So Tantra within Hinduism, Kabbalah within the Judaic systems, Gnostic Christianity within the Gnostic systems, and the Qigong and Taoist systems within Chinese system generally. That's mainly esoteric anyway. They've never really had an exoteric system there.
So, on the note of having these spirit, guides, allies, do you have any advice or anything like that for working with this spirit that I've been working with here tonight? I did earlier definitely instruct him to not enter me without permission.
Yeah, ground rules are good.
Yeah.
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 I mean, often, this is a fairly, it's a fairly open and safe methodology that we're working with here. Outside of that, the thing is, of course, spirits can get really aggressive. They can get aggressive. You might say to them, "Don't enter me," when I don't want you to, and they might say, "Do what I want." It can be like this sometimes. Luckily, this is a much more structured kind of work, so you can kind of make ground rules with the beings that you're working with, and you can set certain conditions, etc. I mean, they may be something in return that's needed to be offered or something, but you can lay down some ground rules in that way. But really it's always a question of going in, meeting, talking, making companionship. You know, these beings have been with us for a long time. I mean, we can attract new energies to us as our own bodies evolve. But a lot of the beings that want to work with us are beings that we have worked with before, and you know that we have had relationship before. But of course, with the great forgetting that happens really from moment to moment, but certainly from lifetime to lifetime, we tend to forget this kind of work and these allies and stuff. So we need to kind of like make friends with them again. So go in meditation, go into your inner temple, meet, ask what they require on the physical plane in order to make your relationship with them easier. They may require an altar, they may require offerings on a certain day of the week, they may require a certain drum, rhythm or dance, they may give you a chant or a mantra or some kind of mudra or sign or gesture by which you can call them easily. Yeah, it's really a matter of kind of making friends and making a relationship. If we don't really know, then going into the woods, for you particularly, go into the woods with your drum, you know, go into the deep darkness of the wood. It doesn't have to be at night time, but you know, just go deep and drum and keep drumming, and call and feel and sense, and experience and see what comes. You can put some boundaries up and borders up. You don't want to attract just anything, but you can put a magic circle around yourself.
Have you taught us how to do that?
I have, but I mean, you know, just draw a circle in the ground around you, but make sure that you're drawing the circle on the inner planes also,
Yeah.
basically.
What's your advice on having an intention?
Yeah,
So,
have one. Intention is everything. Intention is everything. So we're entering into an acausal universe when we enter into the magical universe. So in our daily lives, we can sort of understand a certain amount of the of causality. If I drop a cup, it's probably going to break. Now, in the magical universe, if you drop a cup, it doesn't necessarily break, because that's not necessarily the cause of it breaking. The cause might be something different. So it's an acausal universe that we're entering into. So the only thing that can drive the experience is intention. You don't know what you're going to have to do to get to where you're going. That's not your job. All you need to do is define what you want to become. All you need to do is define where you want to go. So it's like paying the bus driver and you say, I want to go here, and you don't know the route. You don't care what the route is. In fact, all you really want to do is just get to where you want to go to. So you pay the bus driver, you get on the bus and you wait, and in the end you get to where you want to go. So it's like this with the medicine. Set your intention, settle back, relax. So magical traditions advise that we should let go of the lust for result once we've set a particular intention. This means that you don't need to sit there repeating your intention throughout the whole experience. You can set your intention during the prayerful stage, which we'll talk about in a little bit, at the beginning of the ceremony, and then you can let it go. We trust that the universe has heard us, we trust that the divine has heard us, and we just kind of settle into whatever is going to happen. Now, the experience itself and what we've asked for, we may not be able to understand the relationship with it. It may be very unclear. We might be seeing all kinds of bizarre stuff that doesn't seem to have anything to do with what we've asked for. But that's simply because we don't understand the vast complexity of this magical universe. It's extremely deep, it's extremely complex. It may require going back into a lifetime that you had, like, 2,000 years ago, in order to sort out one tiny little thing, in order to be able to do exactly what you've asked for. Or it may need to take you to another planet, or it may need to sort out a particular aspect of your energy body, something like this. So we don't worry about how the medicine works or the way that the medicine is working. We just trust that our intention is going to come forth at the end like that. So intentions want to be open-ended, meaning we don't really know actually, in fact, what the possibilities of the work it is at the beginning of the work. We don't really know what can happen, what could I become. Well, it goes very deep and very far, so we want to be quite open and unrestrictive in our intentionality. Example, instead of saying, I want a brand new red Corvette 1982, you just say, I want the perfect vehicle to take me where I need to go. Same idea, but unrestrictive. Likewise, a good intention is something like, please take me to the highest levels of initiation available to me at the moment. Please take me to the highest stages or states of consciousness that I'm ready for. Things like this. Please allow me to access all the power and magic that is available to me at present. Things of this nature, you know. So it's forward orientating. It gives you a goal. You don't know how you're going to get there, and you don't know what it looks like, but you can flow into that. So the cause really is not in the past. The cause is in the future, but only if you define it as such. This means that we are not bound by the past. Most of us believe that we are bound and conditioned by our past experience, and in believing such, we bind ourselves to that. But in fact, the truth of the matter is we can be free in this moment, right now, from the whole of our past. Because there is just this moment. And instead of orientating to the past, we instead orientate to a future self that we wish to become. In this way, we can continually evolve, transform, and grow. See, we tend to reitify our lives over and over again. We tend to say we were this, and therefore we are this, and therefore we will always be this. But of course, that's just an idea. In fact, we're free and liberated in every moment to become anything, go anywhere, see anything.
How do you best work with the experience that you had during the ceremony afterwards?
Yeah, it's another good question. It's not actually necessary to. This is the truth of the matter. It's not necessary to work with the experience that you had on the medicine, because you're not here for an ayahuasca experience. That's just tourism. That's just more tourism. You want to go see the Eiffel Tower, you want to go and have an ayahuasca experience, you want to go and do this. And no, it's not like this. This is for the benefit of understanding the nature of reality and ultimate reality. So we take the realizations from the work into our lives, but we don't take the experience, because the experience is really nothing more than purging. It's taking you to where you want to go, but it's essentially irrelevant in and of itself. Now, it's not to say that we can't gain some kind of something from it, in the same way that we can gain something from dreams. It's very similar. The emphasis and that we give to the dream, the attempt to unfold its symbology, will obviously bring us some kind of benefit. We will gain something from that. But it isn't the experience that we're here for. It's the growth, it's the transformation, it's the wisdom, it's the understanding that we gain from that. Which again is why the Dharma aspect, the teaching aspect in my view is so important, is because otherwise all you have is your experience, and you don't know anything other than that. You haven't sort of thought about what that actually means. Because it brings us back to Otto's question, you see, at the beginning, which is concerned with the nature of generative reality. So the best way to understand is through the metaphor or view of the dream. So in a dream, you go to bed, you tuck yourself in, somebody else checks in, go to sleep, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a new universe, and there's all this stuff happening, and you're seeing stuff, and you're experiencing other people, and you're walking around, and you're doing stuff, and it's all very kind of like strange, but you're kind of convinced that it's reality while you're there. And then you wake up and you realise, oh, that was all in my head. It was all in my head. Not only were the people and the things in my head and all the objects of the dream, but the spatial relationship was also in my head. The temporal relationship was also in my head. In other words, that there was space in my dream because I wasn't in a tiny undimensional space. I was in a dimensional space. I could walk around in my dream and not bump into stuff. The time in the dream, of course, may be very peculiar, but in the same way, there was time in the dream. And you wake up and you realise it was all in your head. The time, the space, the beings, the emotions, all inside of you. Now, sometimes you can wake up in your dream, lucidity, and you can suddenly go, wow, I'm dreaming. And you can run around in your dream, and you can do all kinds of exciting things, which people do. But you still don't know where is the dream coming from. You're walking around in the dream and you know you're asleep in your bed, but you've still got no idea how or where this reality is being generated from. You've got no idea. So it has to be coming from a higher dimensional aspect of self. It's a higher dimensional aspect of self. It has to be. It's not coming from your mind or your body. I mean, it's doing it on its own. It's just being generated, a reality right there. Now, we go into ayahuasca or we go into another medicine space, and there we are, we're just normal people. We drink the medicine, and all of a sudden, we're in another reality. There are aliens, there are gods, there are demons, there are ghosts, there are ancestors, there's all this stuff that wasn't there 10 minutes ago. And you come down and you can say to yourself, wow, that was all in my head. That was all inside of me. It was being generated from something I can't comprehend. There was another reality being generated there. And we extrapolate. We take that up to this level of reality. The word Buddha means to awaken. Buddha is the awakened one, or the wokened one. He was asked, are you a god? No. Are you a man? No. What are you? I am awake. What was he awake to? He was awake to the fact that reality is also a generated reality, a generated dream, and it also is being generated from a higher dimensional aspect of self. So we don't get caught up in what the little generated reality was, because likewise in a dream it might have been you having a cup of tea, and it's interesting enough, and you can analyse it and look at it, but the most interesting thing is, where did that come from? Where did that image come from? Where did that generation come from? And in this way, we begin to work deeper and deeper into the medicine. Instead of getting caught up in the experience of the medicine, we begin to analyse it and look at it and try and understand it from that space. And what we come to, of course, is the very real and very experiential understanding of non-duality. Non-duality, that there isn't anything outside of you, that there never was. There are no other beings here. In the same way there are no other beings in the medicine, in the same way there are no other beings in the dream. Because you are all of that, but you've caught yourself in a tiny little corner of your own experience, of your own lives, called the ego, which makes it seem like there is a you and an other, that there is an inside and an outside, that there is an objective and a subjective. But when we really go deep enough, when we really use our inquiry, what we understand is there is only subjective reality in all levels. And that subjective reality is being generated by the self, not myself, not I, but the self. And it encompasses all dimensions, all times, all spaces, all realities. this is you. This is what you are. This quote from Ramana Maharshi. Somebody just said to him, how do you help others? Ramana just said, there are no others. In this way also, when we really take this understanding into the medicine, it eradicates fear. Eradicates fear. Yes, there is a demon in front of you, but is it outside of you? Is it different from you? Is it separate from you? Or is it you? It's you. So we learn how do we reintegrate all of this disparity, all of these different aspects of ourselves that have become projected into all of these different beings and realities that we're experiencing. How can we recall all of that into the totality of our own psyche, into the totality of ourself, so that we understand very fully there are no others, there is only myself. And the ego is included in that. The ego is not to be eradicated or destroyed or slain. No, it can be evolved, it can be matured, and it can be reintegrated into the self in a useful way.
When we're kind of tapping into the self or higher states or stages of consciousness, and as we move into a space where we can more easily move to the Tao or the way or just the realities of the brain, is tapping into that in a sense the same as tuning into how consciousness wants to evolve, or is consciousness more of this open space that's open to whatever direction it wants to evolve, kind of more naturally occurring, or is there more of a direction or magnitude to that we're tapping into?
Well, I mean, are you asking on one level where if there is the sort of the possibility of understanding the grand schema of consciousness?
And how fluid is that scheme, I guess, is more of what I'm asking.
Well, it's not going to be understood by the rational mind. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Which perhaps might seem a little bit contrary to what I said earlier about bringing rationality and logic to the game. No, still bring it. It doesn't mean it's going to get there, but bring it anyway. It's sort of, it's more important to be with it than to understand it. It's more important than to be happy than to understand.
So would you say happiness is when one does get into the touch or in the flow of that? How?
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkably bubbly, viscous, compassionate, wise, gentle, peaceful energy. I would say, that it's sort of, it's again not to say that it makes your life any easier. I mean, life can still be very, very difficult. We're still burning through karma, even if we are at a certain stage of consciousness. Things are still going to manifest, but obviously our relationship to them and our attitude to them is very different. We're no longer at war with ourselves or with the world. We're no longer antagonistic to it or feel antagonized by it. We understand it as the path. We understand it as the vehicle. So instead of viewing the things that come to us that cause us problems or difficulties as being antithetical or problematic for our spiritual evolution, in other words, I want to be meditating in a cave, but I've got to deal with this horrible person at work. If we're looking at this where we've completely misunderstood, that is the work. The work is the horrible person at work. That's the vehicle. If you can work with that, then you can become free anywhere. You know, this is the path of the marketplace, not the path of the cave dweller. It's not the path of the monastic. We're bringing it into our lives. We're using our lives as the path itself. You know? And again, yeah, not necessarily easier, but with that view, it's like, bring it on. Please, come on. Yeah, do lean with that, please. Please.
This might be a little bit unrelated, but what do you suppose the consciousness of dark matter is? Because one time I had ayahuasca and I felt like I was a black hole, like I was inside of the black hole in the center of this
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah.
And there was like some consciousness communicating with me, but it was
Mhm.
like, I didn't really I couldn't integrate it. Like it was not like an experience that I could explain other than that I connected with that.
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you see, well, ultimately, I'd like to turn the language around, because ultimately things don't have consciousness. Ultimately, things are consciousness.
Yeah.
So, consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of the body or the brain. It's the brain and the body are epiphenomenons of consciousness.
Yeah.
Reality is an epiphenomenon of consciousness. So in that regard, there's that. Now, it's not to say that things don't have sort of personalities even. It's not to say that things don't have their own voice even. And obviously different aspects of reality can communicate to us in different ways. So really what we're dealing with when it comes to dark matter, of course, firstly is the majority of the energy in the universe. There's probably at least 95% of reality is dark matter, or the opposite of the manifested reality. And in the Kabbalistic model, the Tree of Life gives us quite a nice view of this, in that you have the spheres of manifested reality, which include the known God and the unknown God. And then outside of all of that, you have the Ein Sof and the Ein Sof Al. And these are degrees of light, limitless light, but because they're unmanifest, it is essentially dark matter. It's essentially that which lies behind the manifested reality, is giving the sort of, is holding up the manifested reality ultimately. So it's very powerful. It's actually a realm of very deep magic. If we tap into the dark matter universe, we can tap into a vast storehouse of energy and power. So it's kind of a good thing to tune into. Now, how it will communicate and what it will say, yeah, I mean, obviously that's going to depend on lots of different things. And, you know, you probably don't have ears to hear in the beginning. You probably have to kind of spend a little bit of time there and really kind of learn and listen quite hard and try and work out what the hell it's saying. I mean, actually, ultimately, of course, it's pointing us towards the direction of don't be obscured, don't be occulted by the manifestation, by the physical manifestation, but always look to the subtle, always look to the hidden, always look to the behind, and see what energy is feeding that. Yeah, we go deeper in that way. They just apparently measured for the first time the energy coming off the collision of 3 black holes, which who knows how much energy that's going to have kind of like sent out into the universe, you know.
What was that?
Mm?
What was that?
Very recently, like last couple of weeks, you know.
That's when they've heard it.
That I probably analysed the sounds or something. I would imagine it's a long project. I don't think they just suddenly went, whoa. Okay, let's move on a little bit from our general discussion to what we're going to be doing specifically this evening together.
Where's the bathroom?
Oh, we can go over that here shortly.
Just asking about the bathroom.
Yeah. So we will take a break. We'll take a break in a few minutes once I finish talking about what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be doing it. So, first we're going to be starting with our evening's puja. Puja is a way to make relationship with allies, actually, ultimately. It's probably not talked about like that or sort of viewed like that from traditional Hindus or anything like that. But really, like any shamanic tradition or magical tradition, it's a methodology by which humanity can make contact with the world of the gods, the world of the spirits, the world of the divine. The understanding, though, is quite different from the religions of the book. It's about the understanding that this is within us, that we are calling forth the highest aspects of our own being, of our own nature, that we're not calling upon some black four-armed woman on a cloud and saying, you know, come down and help us. No, we are making contact with those energies, those realities, those stages of consciousness within our own being. Because, again, as I said, ultimately there is nothing outside of oneself, and that includes the realm of the gods, of course, they're within us. That's how we make contact with them, that's how we've always made contact with them, to go within and find them. So, we call upon different deities on different day of the week. Tonight we're working with Kali. Saturday night is Kali night. Saturday is Kali's day. And from many, many thousands of years of having made relationship with these beings, we know what they like. We know that, we know what kind of fruits they like, we know what smells they like, we know what sounds they like, we know what songs they like. We actually know them pretty well. And as we've been working with them ourselves for a long time, they are very magnanimous and generous in their energy, and they come. They turn up when we call upon them. Now, you may not know that, you may not feel it or sense it, or you may have very, very obvious manifestations in that way. It's irrelevant. Know they're there, know they're being of assistance, and they can help us. And tonight we're working with Kali. Kali is the goddess of freedom. She's the goddess of liberation. She's the goddess of truth. She speeds up our karma and brings forth that which would manifest over many, many lifetimes. She brings it into this lifetime. She brings it into this lifetime so that we can work with it and become free of it. She also sort of takes it, so it makes it easier at the same time. But the main thing about this speeding up of karma is, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? And what we do with it is we understand the principle of non-attachment. Now, non-attachment, many people sort of suggest means, oh, I have to give this up, or I have to give that up, or I have to go and live in a cave, or I can't have any more relationships because I won't evolve on my spiritual path, blah, 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 blah. All of that nonsense. Non-attachment really hasn't got anything to do with that. Non-attachment is to do with identification. Identification with you and what is arising. Now, if an experience of mind arises and we lock onto that and we say, this is my fault, I'm thinking this and I'm going to do something about it, that's attachment. If you're able to understand that thoughts are coming and going without any activity or identification of your own, it can just pass away. Likewise emotions, likewise energies and experiences, likewise outward apparent manifestations. All of this is just happening. There is no individual doer of experience. There's no individual thinker. There is no individualized self. There is only the whole. There's only the whole. And the whole is manifesting in every moment. And it's not identified as being any tiny little aspect. It's the whole, constantly. So, by releasing our identification to what's happening, we free it, we liberate it. And in freeing that moment, we enable the next moment to come forth without any burden. It makes it easier to liberate that next moment. Likewise, the next, the next, the next. So we continually self-liberate. We self-liberate by releasing our attachment or our aversion to whatever it is that's arising. We have a non-conditional relationship with what's arising. We don't say it has to be like this or it has to be like that. We just say it is like this, it is like that. Kali wants to go down into the darkness of our own being and bring forth all of the things that we've been avoiding and running away from. All of the cobwebs in the cellars of our consciousness. She wants to house clean, dust, and make it shiny and bright. Bring it up into the light in order to be seen, witnessed, and liberated. That's what she wants to do. So we have to have a certain amount of balls, of guts, to go in there and say, no, I want to see this, I want to deal with it. And again, without any identification, just because we think, we did something in our past that we were ashamed of, we identified with that very heavily, now we've hidden it away in the cells of our mind. The way that we re-liberate it is by facing it without that level of personal attachment. We view it as an experience that happened within the construct of this body-mind, within this personal energy, but we don't identify with it. We don't say this is mine. We don't reitify it. We don't go over it again and again and relive it. No, we just allow it to come up, be seen, witnessed, released, like this. Kali wants to cut the root of the ego. To cut the root of the ego. This is the image of the severed head. It's the root of the ego. The root of the ego is self-clinging. The root of the ego is self-identification. Ego is identification. If we say, I am a doctor, ego. If we say, I am anything, ego. You are both everything and nothing. Puja is done before the ceremony, and then that energy can transfer into the ayahuasca experience, penetrate the ayahuasca experience. And Kali kind of is in charge of the ceremony. And again, it doesn't mean that you necessarily see her or experience her. You may be off on the ayahuasca trip, you may be off with plant spirits or animal spirits, but just know that that energy is there, doing the very, very deep work of bringing you to full realization, full consciousness, full enlightenment. Puja lasts around 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Then we'll take a break, go to the bathroom, organise ourselves, and we'll come back and we'll begin medicine proper. I'll begin by banishing and protecting the space, setting up protective barriers around the room, setting up protective guardians around the room, banishing anything on an elemental level that may interfere with our work. We are then going to open the 4 directions. All magical schools and shamanic systems have some way of working with the elements, with the directions, some kind of spiritual GPS system whereby you know where you are at the start of your journey and how to orientate back to that at the end of your journey. We invite the energies of the elements to assist us in the medicine work. We'll then come round and we'll do a blessing and a protection on each of you individually. Then we're going to offer the medicine to the 4 directions and ask the elements again to bless the medicine, the directions to bless the medicine. And then I'm going to come back over here and we're going to pour the medicine. And I'm going to pour the medicine one by one, starting with Megan in the corner, working our way around the room. If I'm pouring you the medicine, come up to the front here, receive your medicine, go back, sit down. Once everybody has received their medicine, we'll all drink together at the end. While you're waiting for your medicine, this is the time to set your prayers, to set your intentions, to tell the medicine what you'd like while you're here, while you're drinking. Once we've all drunk the medicine, lights will go out. You guys are going to sit in darkness and in stillness and in silence. stillness and silence doesn't just refer to the outer aspect, but it refers to our attitude and our relationship to the work, which should be one of non-avoidance. Non-avoidance. So we are, in our lives, constantly running away, constantly avoiding the present and what is. We distract ourselves endlessly, constantly, to avoid the basic nature of our experience, which is actually essentially suffering or uncomfortable at the very least. Medicine doesn't do anything to help that. It's bringing up all this stuff, it's making you more uncomfortable with what is. So we try and find ways to avoid it. We get up and we move around, we shout out loud, we sing, we dance, we go to the bathroom when we don't need to, we do all kinds of different things to basically avoid. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be with it. Face it as a warrior. Don't avoid it. Be very open, be very free, allow it to self-liberate in this way. Medicine lasts 3.5 hours, a bit longer, 3.5, 4 hours, something like this, depending on the energy in the room. After that time, I'll come round, I'll ground you back into your bodies, and then we'll chill out a little bit together afterwards. When you need to throw up, just throw up. Try not to throw up within the first half an hour. This is when you're metabolizing the medicine. Sometimes you can't help it. If it's late enough, we won't worry. If you vomit very, very early, I'll let you settle down a little bit and then I'll come round and give you more medicine. Just take that a little bit more slowly to allow it to integrate a little bit more like this. If you need to go to the bathroom, just go to the bathroom. If you need help going to the bathroom, or if you need help on physical level, meaning moving around, water, any of these things, we have the delightful Dan and the marvellous Megan to be of service to you. And if you need their assistance, you can just call their name quietly, or just say help, or something like this. I am here to be of assistance to you on the magical and shamanic levels, like this. Questions about any of that?
Are you going to serve everyone Somalia or just?
I certainly wasn't planning on it. I mean, if you're super keen, you can. But I mean, have you drunk medicine before? Yes.
Yeah.
And you've done Sananga before?
Many times.
Yeah, many times. Okay, well then you're welcome to combine the two in a raging fire madness. Obviously, be aware that they potentialise each other and that it's very intense, but good. Yeah. No, I'm not going to offer to everybody again if you're really desperate for something.
And how do you see rapé and coca?
Yeah. Neither of the above. Just keep it as is for now, and just be with the medicine. Again, even if we've drunk many times before, we do tend to use all of these things as means of avoidance. we smoke because we want to kind of come down a little bit. We think that we're going too far and we want to ground, or we're using rapé to manipulate or change the basic experience that we're having in some way. So we're trying to learn how to be non-manipulative in some way, to just be with the basic experience. It's not to say it doesn't have value. It's not to say it can't be really useful. It can do both of these things, but also it can be just another means of kind of like just trying to stop what's actually happening, which is where we need to be ultimately. So, plus rapé during ceremony is just a mess. we drink tobacco juice. Yeah, we'll drink tobacco juice at the end of the ceremony.
Snort it.
Snort. If you're very experienced before and you want to smoke a little bit during the ceremony, it's okay. If you haven't, don't, because you will use it to avoid, I guarantee.
I just have sort of a question on the banishing ritual that you do. Because, I mean, I'm sure it does a lot, but clearly it doesn't keep out all the spirits because the one that came to me came through. And so is it like allowing some that might ultimately be beneficial, or how does that work?
No, that was coming from you. So it was inside the room once we banished.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it wants to open us up to our allies. We're definitely not closing down to allies and things like this. We want to open up to our own spiritual energies. What we don't want is extraneous energies from the outside getting in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay guys, let's please take a 10-minute break. Come back, begin puja. Please make sure you know where all the bathrooms are. All the bathrooms.
And Dante, the bathroom, you come out this door, just go down the right, at the end of this hallway, there will be a candle. Then there's one to the left.
Go and have a look.
Yeah, you'll see them. Yeah.
Yep, and there's a light on in that one as well. What are Kali's fruits?
She does like blueberries.
So it's
She does like red apples.
Okay.
And then I sort of stopped doing it, but I used to just do colour orientations. So just all the red.
All the
fruit.
red things,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean, some deities do have a particular affinity for some fruits over others.
Right.
For example, the pomegranates with Ganesha.
Yes,
he's
yes.
particularly keen on. But what I found in my early days of working was they just fucking love blueberries, man.
Well, who doesn't?
doesn't?
They're
She's really
so
good.
good. What about Shiva?
Shiva, he also loves blueberries. White fruits.
Okay.
White fruits, meaning you can
Cherimoya
peel it and
and-
it's white on the inside.
Gotcha. Cherimoya. Okay.
But I have what I found, and why I don't particularly concern myself anymore is they're pretty keen on all of it, actually. Fruits just is a very kind of pure energy, it's very fresh
Yeah.
energy, so they're keen on all of it, basically.
Yeah.
I haven't found them to be sort of, I don't know that or I don't know this.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of ceremony, Paul gets a message to him. One more mango.
I'm a